Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. We'll wait for 2 more minutes and then we'll start.
Uh, Ma'am, which chapter will you do today?
Tissue.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Ma'am, which chapter are we going to do today?
Tissue chapter. You know, you must have studied that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
It's a revision class.
Okay, ma'am.
Tissue chapter is full of new terms and some complicated terms. So it's more about learning and revising them. So if we'll go through it once, so it will help you to learn all of this, right? Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so let's start. First of all, we you must have studied about cell, that how cell is the building block for all organisms that exist. Now, for example, for unicellular organisms, there was one cell. But in case of multicellular organisms, there are many cells. And a group of cells, they combine to perform a single function. That is like one person is performing some function and five people are performing a function together. So this is done to increase the efficiency so that they can do the work better and faster. That is same process that is happening in our body. Group of cells combine and they form tissue. And then these group of cells in together perform a specific function. So if I'll ask that what is tissue, then can you write simple that tissue is a group of cells, which are these cells are similar in structure. They are all of these cells are similar. We'll study the cases where these cells can be somewhat different and the cases when these cells will be same in a tissue. These group of cells work together to form tissues. Is it clear? So if they ask what is tissue, so tissue is a group of cells which work together to perform a particular function efficiently. Now, are plants and animals having same types of tissues? So, before answering this question, can anyone tell me that are the functions of plants and animals are same?
No, ma'am.
How are they different? What do plants do different from animals?
Ma'am, plants are stationary,
Yes, and animals
animals
are
move.
moving. They have to move because it's like natural plants are forming their own food. Their function is to remain stationary and they are performing the process of photosynthesis then and there only, okay? But humans or animals, they have to move around because they have to search for food, they have to search for shelter. So these tissues, which are going to perform some function, they'll have to be different in plants and animals. For example, simple plants have to be stationary. So they need tissues which are supportive. The, the tissues which will help them to stand erected. While animals, they'll need some tissues which will help them to move around. To move around, they'll need more energy. So the tissues of some plants where the tissues will help the plant to be supportive and stand erect, they can be dead cells. But for animals, since they have to move around and they have to consume more energy, their tissues contain living cells. Now, if we see the case of pattern of growth, when, for example, animal or a human is born,
Yes, ma'am.
it's a newborn, then it changes to child, and then to an adult. If we see for a plant, it also grows from smaller and then to a bigger plant. But we also see that we see new branches forming, right? Is that the case with humans that we see their hands and legs growing till like ages? No, right? So pattern of growth is also different for plants and animals. Plants, they are dividing throughout their life. Like if we pluck some leaves, some days after later we'll see that a new leaf is growing on plants. So their pattern of growth is different from how humans or animals grow. Animals grow uniformly.
Yes, ma'am.
All of their hands, legs, their whole body, it will grow together with age. But that is not the case in plants. That's why with respect to pattern of growth or whether it's with respect to moving or being stationary, the functions of plants and animals are different. That's why the tissues in them are also different. First of all, we'll study about plants tissues.
Yes, ma'am.
So, first is meristematic tissue. It is like, as I told you, that we see that plants are growing from specific regions. For example, we pluck a leaf and then from that part a new leaf is growing. So the tissues which are present there at that node, which these tissues are known as meristematic tissues. We classify them as meristematic tissues. If we see the definition of meristematic tissues, these are the tissues which aid growth in specific regions. And what are those specific regions in plants? For
Ma'am,
example, yes,
ma'am, the roots, the stems, the leaf nodes, internodes.
yes. For example, you said roots. So roots, we also have the apical part.
Apical
The
meristem,
roots,
ma'am.
yes, these are like ends of the plant from there where they grow. Similarly, for lateral meristem, for example, we see that a smaller plant is very thin in its width,
Yes, ma'am.
but as it becomes a tree, the width is very large, right? So
Yes, ma'am.
which tissues aid in that growth?
Ma'am, intercalary?
That are lateral meristem. Lateral, the name itself.
Right, girt of the roots. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, the
Width.
width or the girth of the stem or root increases due to
Lateral meristem.
lateral meristem. And the intercalary meristem. These are near the nodes. For example, this is stem and this is a leaf. At this point, we have intercalary meristem. Here, for example, if we cut this part, still it will grow. Okay, so these are classified as apical, lateral, and intercalary.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have studied about meristematic tissue. Now, some features of meristematic tissue. It can also be asked in exams that
Mhm.
these meristematic tissues, since they are growing, they have to grow. So these tissues are
Active
active,
state of division.
yes, and they have dense cytoplasm. These cells, these are dense. This is the property that normally exists, that the meristematic cells have a dense cytoplasm. You must have studied about cytoplasm and all those
Yes, ma'am.
parts of cells, right? Then their cell wall is thin, and then their nuclei is also big. They do not have vacuoles. They do not have vacuoles because their function is normally what? To aid growth. They
Yes,
are
ma'am.
not producing any excreta or anything, and vacuoles is used to remove that excreta, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So if they ask that what are the properties of meristematic cells, so you'll write that these are active cells. They have dense cytoplasm. They have thin cell wall or cellulose wall. The nuclei is prominent and they do not have vacuoles. Clear? Can anyone give me an overview of meristematic tissue? That how we will define it and what are the three parts or the types of meristematic tissues we have and their characteristics? Anyone? Yes?
Ma'am,
Ma'am, they
Yes,
grow
yes.
throughout their life.
And in specific regions.
Yes.
ma'am, the meristematic cells are the cells that are always in a state of division and give rise to new ones. They're only present they're only present in specific parts of the plant.
Yes,
And the growth in leaves is due to the presence of meristematic tissues.
yes,
The meristematic tissues are of three types. Apical, which is present on the tip of the root or the stems. It helps in the
yes,
growth of the tips and of the stems of the roots and the roots. Then we have intercalary, which helps in the elongation of the plants.
yes,
And the lateral meristem, which is present on the and the lateral meristem, which is present on the lateral side of stems and roots.
plants.
It helps in the girth
Yes,
of the stems and roots.
yes.
That is why
And that, yes,
when a tree is growing, it becomes wider. Like when a plant grows into a tree, it becomes wide.
yes.
Like the width of the tree.
And then their characteristics,
Ma'am,
the meristematic tissue.
yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Ma'am, since they lack vacuoles, they're always in an active state of division. They have a dense cytoplasm. They have thin cell walls and they have a prominent nuclei.
yes. So everyone clear? So now we have revised meristematic tissue. So we'll move on next to permanent tissue. So meristematic tissue was always in state of division. It was growing. So what is different with permanent tissue?
Ma'am, they
They,
cannot divide.
yes, they take up a specific role. In meristematic tissue, it was specific region and they're dividing. In permanent tissue, they have divided now. Now like the meristematic tissue divided whatever it had to divide. Now there come has then now it is a stage where it has achieved a specific role. Now it cannot divide further, and for rest of its life, these cells will perform a specific role. That's why they are called permanent tissue.
Yes, ma'am.
So what are main points that they'll have? Specific role
Role
and
in
they don't divide.
have the presence of meristematic tissues, ma'am.
Yes. After we, for example, we see that the tip of a stem is growing. But after some point of time, we'll see that it has become a rigid stem. It's not, or it has become divided into a leaf.
Ma'am,
So
does that
now
happen
leaf,
because they lose the ability to divide after a certain uh,
yes,
age after they grow?
yes. they take up a specific role and they lose the ability to divide. Yes, meristematic tissues only. Till they grow, they are meristematic tissue, but when they lose this ability to divide
They
and they achieve a
become
specific
permanent.
role, they are permanent tissue.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, isn't that special process known as differentiation?
Yes, yes, I've highlighted this that this is an important definition. You can be asked in exams that this process of taking permanent shape, size, or a function is called differentiation.
Ma'am, when you say function, what does it mean? Like when a cell takes
What
a
is the function? Yes, the function of a leaf, function of a stem, function of a bud, function of a flower. Isn't it different?
yes, ma'am.
So these meristematic tissues, they were growing. Now they are permanent tissue. They have achieved some shape, for example, shape of leaf. They have converted into a leaf. Now, what function will leaf perform? According to that, it has to have those tissues,
Yes, ma'am.
right? So
Yeah, I
those
am.
tissues will have different functions. So these are those functions. They will take up some permanent shape, permanent size, and a permanent function.
Permanent function.
Yes. And this process is called differentiation. Now, these permanent tissue are of various types. We'll say two, simple permanent tissue and complex permanent tissue. The differentiation is very basic. In simples, it is a simple thing where the tissues are made up of only one types of cell, where only a single type of cell is present throughout the tissue. While in complex permanent tissue, the tissue can have different types of cells. We'll study that in complex. First, let us complete permanent tissues. Simple permanent tissues. So, for example, we'll study examples of simple permanent tissue, which can be, I'll list some here: parenchyma, florenchyma, erenchyma,
Colin Kama.
collenchyma.
Ma'am,
So
even
these are, yes,
ma'am, sclerenchyma too, right?
yes, that too. So first of all, let us discuss their functions. Why we have named so many tissues under simple permanent tissue. So it is a uns for parenchyma, it is an unspecialized cell with thin cell walls. For example, this is epidermis, the outermost layer. You know about epidermis, the outermost layer?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So beneath that, we have,
Parenchyma.
yes. So they are very loosely arranged and they have space between them.
Yes, ma'am.
This intercellular spaces.
Ma'am, that is why they have thin cell walls, right?
Yes. This large spaces, and these are used to store food. So what you have to remember for parenchyma, that they are simple. First of all, we are studying them under, for example, if you're asked about parenchyma, that discuss about parenchyma or write what is parenchyma. So first is that you are studying it under simple permanent tissue. So you'll write that it is a simple permanent tissue. It is unspecialized cell. That is not,
No
the cells are
specialization.
not that specialized or, yes, hello,
Yes, ma'am.
and they have very thin cell walls.
Cell
They
walls.
are living cells, plus they are loosely arranged, and they have large intercellular spaces.
Ma'am, and they
And they
also
have
store
general,
food, right?
yes,
Ma'am, they also help in the storage of food, right?
yes. So we can write an overview. Any one of you can help. That if you asked about parenchyma, what will write that it is a which type of tissue? Anyone can answer. No need to raise hand. You just switch on your mic and say.
Ma'am, can I?
Yes,
Ma'am, so first, parenchyma is a type of simple permanent tissue.
yes,
It is present on the soft parts of the plants and it is found beneath the epidermis.
yes,
Ma'am, it has little or no specialization at all because of its thin cell walls. It
yes,
has large intercellular space because they're loosely arranged. The cells are loosely packed.
yes,
Ma'am, and it acts as a food storage unit.
and a food storage.
Mhm.
Its function is
Food storage.
storing the food.
Storing the food.
So, all of you can also write these short points. This will help you that you can revise them before exam because this is a chapter which has very new data for all of you. So, you can also make these short notes like this on a piece of paper. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, next,
Ma'am,
yes,
ma'am, isn't parenchyma and collenchyma part of parenchyma?
parenchyma, part of parenchyma.
Ma'am, it's a parenchyma tissue only, right? Parenchyma.
Actually, they are all similar, simple permanent tissues, and they're similar type. But
Okay.
it
Ma'am, but it is
modifies
also a
it
parenchymatous tissue,
modifies
right, ma'am?
according to the situation. Yes.
Ma'am, because our teacher
Ma'am,
told us
but
that
it
it's
is
part
also
of
a parent.
parenchyma.
For example, parenchyma, if it is present in aquatic plants.
Then it's parenchyma
Yes.
because it provides the ability to float for the plants.
So such a parenchyma is called erenchyma.
Ma'am, there's also
Right?
chlorenchyma, right? Part of parenchyma in the desert plants. No, when parenchyma performs the process of photosynthesis.
See,
Ma'am,
we have studied
chlorenchyma.
that. Yes, we have studied about parenchyma that this is a type of tissue. Okay.
Yes,
Now
ma'am.
we'll study how these modifications in according to the situation has led to formation of different types of tissue. Of course, they
Okay,
are
ma'am.
parenchyma only. They are below epidermis, right?
Yes, ma'am.
But there are different kinds of parenchyma,
Yes, ma'am.
and we have named them differently. So if you write about chlorenchyma, you'll specify that it contains
Contains
chlorophyll
chlorophyll.
and performs synthesis.
Photosynthesis.
Therefore, it's called parenchyma. Or in for erenchyma, it's that it is an
Aquatic
aquatic
plants,
plant and it has cavities,
which
so it
provides
will help them
buoyancy.
float.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, what is the role of roots and stems in parenchyma?
What is the role of?
Ma'am, in parenchyma, do the roots and stems store nutrients?
Yes, they store food, any
Okay.
kind of food. So what is the food for plants? This is nutrients and in the
Minerals.
dissolved form only.
Yes, ma'am.
Nutrients in water, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we have studied parenchyma. Then we have discussed about chlorenchyma. That in when the parenchyma has chlorophyll and then perform photosynthesis, it is called chlorenchyma. When parenchyma has large cavities in case of aquatic plants, which helps them to float, it is called erenchyma, right? And then we have collenchyma for flexibility in plants so that they can bend. We know some climbers. For example, in Hindi we call them bale, if you know that. These
Hmm.
plants which are climbing over our walls. So they have flexibility. They can bend. So this flexibility is with the help of the tissue.
Colin
Which tissue?
Kaepernick.
Collenchyma, which helps them bending. And
Without breaking.
yes, the flexibility is that only they can bend without breaking.
Breaking.
So gives them support also. They gives them flexibility of bending also, and it doesn't let them break. Okay.
Ma'am, the tendrils also, right?
Yes, yes. The thing is, collenchyma provides flexibility.
Yes, sir.
I'm actually this is revision class. That's why I'm trying to cover everything in that we are. I'm teaching you parenchyma, florenchyma, erenchyma, collenchyma, and their basic function. So you can
Yeah.
write in exam. Okay.
Yeah.
So these cells are, we have seen that they are living and they are thickened at the corners. This is also like properties of these tissues. They have now another type of permanent tissue that you were talking about, sclerenchyma. This makes the plant hard. Sometimes we need some plants that have to be hard. For example, we have seen husk of coconut. Is it soft? Can we bend it
Ma'am,
like
we
climbers?
can.
No. So it is hard. So which kind of tissue is present in them? That is,
Muscular and kind.
and these, whenever there is case where we have hard and stuff part in the plant, they are generally made up of dead tissues.
Ma'am,
Okay.
they also have a substance called lignin, no?
Yes. So these, for example, this is part of sclerenchyma only. They have these thick lignified walls, and this is due to lignin. Their walls are thick. Okay. In sclerenchyma, their walls are thickened due to lignin. So when these walls, for example, if we have this, then there's lot of internal space. But for example, if we thicken this, if we are thickening this with the help of lignin, the space available has decreased, right? So the internal space inside this cell has also decreased. So where can these kind of cells be present? In veins of leaves, in hard covering of seeds and nuts. So anywhere where we want to have hard parts in plants. We have seen example of husk of coconut. We have seen, for example, seed covering. There is a seed and then there is a cover to that seed. That seed cover will be hard
Yes, ma'am.
and that is made up of sclerenchyma.
Yes, ma'am.
So anyone who wants to make a revision of this, that this simple permanent tissue.
For
Rohit,
all the
I
three
think I
types.
would like anyone else
Yes,
to,
ma'am.
okay. Yes, Yukta.
Ma'am, the whole simple permanent tissue.
Yes.
Ma'am, simple permanent tissue are of three types, which is parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. Simple permanent tissue are basically made up of one type of cell, and they are found beneath the epidermis, and their function is like a supportive and protective function. So simple permanent tissue में first type, which is parenchyma. It is the most common simple permanent tissue, and it is found in the soft parts of the plant like the leaves, roots, stems, fruits and flowers. And they are generally, they have no specializations, and they have thin cell wall. They have large intercellular spaces, and their function is to store food. Parenchyma have two types, which is collenchyma and erenchyma. So chlorenchyma, so whenever parenchyma cells, they contain some chlorophyll and they perform photosynthesis, then they are called as chlorenchyma. And whenever in aquatic plants, they have large air cavities which help the uh, plant to float. So this type of parenchyma tissue is known as sclerenchyma. Collenchyma is another type of simple permanent tissue which is generally found in the leaf stalks below the epidermis. And their cells are generally living, elongated, and irregularly thickened at the corners. And they have little intercellular space. Their function is to provide mechanical support and to provide flexibility to the plant, which helps the easy bending of various parts of the plant without breaking. And scalenchyma is a last simple permanent tissue which is present near the stems, around the vascular bundle, and the hard coverings of the stems and nuts. Seeds and nuts. Their cells are generally dead and long, and they have are narrow, and they have their cell wall is thickened due to a presence of a substance known as lignin, which provides thickness to the cell wall. And they have no intercellular space, and their function is to provide mechanical support, mechanical strength, and hardness to the plant.
Good, good, very good.
Thank you, ma'am.
So, earlier Rohit and now Yukta revised very well. I think it's helping them as well as others, because if you revise once orally, it will help you in exam itself. You can recall things faster and write answers faster. So, for next part, if anyone else will join to revise, it will be good. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Now, you know about epidermis. It's the outermost layer of the cell, and it is made up of single layers of cell. Like it's thin covering. It's like a package. We store something and we provide a package to it. So it's like package on the, whether it's on the tissues, on cells. So this is epidermis. It is present on every part of the plant. It's like a protective layer. So if you have any question regarding epidermis, you can write its features, that it's outermost layer of the cell. It is a single layer of cell, and it protects the parts of the plant. For example, now in desert regions, we see that there is a waxy layer on the outermost surface. Why is it there? It is secreted by the epidermis, and this resistant layer is on the outer surface. Why is it there? We know that on the outermost layer we have this epidermis, but there are some small openings present. That is stomata. Through stomata, what is the thing that get exchanges?
Gases.
Gases
Gases.
and gases.
Yes, gases like water in gas form, right? The exchange of water. In desert, there's already like scarcity of water. The roots cannot access water. Whatever water is present with plants is they have to store it and use it for a long period of time. So to prevent that, there is a thin covering, waxy covering over the epidermis that prevents this loss of water. So now you know the reason why there is waxy covering over these plants in the desert region.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, we see there are roots. We always draw roots like this. Why roots are taking this form? Why can't be like this? Like this is root. They can take water like this also.
Ma'am,
Why they
they
don't need
increase
to take water like this?
the absorptive area.
Yes. The surface area increases when roots are in hair-like structure. And I explained about this waxy coating over the leaves or the epidermis. So we call it a name called cutin. Okay. If they ask you that what is cutin, can you explain?
Yes, ma'am.
That in the desert plants, the thick waxy coating over the epidermis is called cutin.
Yes, ma'am.
Now we have completed the permanent tissue, and next we are moving on to the complex permanent tissue. We have completed simple permanent tissue. Simple permanent tissue, there was only one type of cell, which were same or similar. While in case of complex tissues, there are more than one type of cell. And for a tissue to be there, what is the main basic thing about a tissue? That group of cells, whether are same cells, whether they are different cells, they'll come together and perform a single function efficiently. So this forms the definition of complex permanent tissue. The examples of complex permanent tissue are xylem and phloem. First of all, we'll discuss xylem. What different kinds of cells are present in xylem? So xylem consists of trachea, vessel, xylem parenchyma, and xylem fibers. These four types of cells are there. Tracheids and vessels have thick walls. They have tubular structure. You can see in the diagram itself that they look like a tube. They have structure similar to a tube, both for tracheid and vessel. So this shape helps them to transport water and minerals vertically. So this gives us a major point about xylem. That xylem tissue is used to transport water and minerals, and which direction? It's vertically. Parenchyma in xylem stores food and helps in giving support. So now if I ask anyone of you can tell me what are the parts of xylem and what are their functions? Any one of you?
Ma'am, ma'am,
Yes,
ma'am, may I tell?
yes, 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 you can.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, xylem consists four types of cells. Ma'am, tracheids,
Yes,
vessels, xylem parenchyma, and xylem parenchyma, ma'am.
yes,
Ma'am, uh, tracheae are involved in conduction of water and minerals, ma'am.
yes,
Ma'am, ma'am, vessels form a continuous channel for efficient conduction of water, ma'am. Ma'am, xylem
yes.
parenchyma, ma'am, the thick-walled parenchymatous cells, they help in storage of food, ma'am.
Parenchyma helps
Ma'am,
in storage of food.
xylem scalerenchyma, Ma'am, they're non-living fibers, ma'am, with thick walls and narrow cavities, which provide support to the plant.
Okay.
Ma'am, in the xylem elements, ma'am, except xylem, parenchyma, all other elements are dead, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, filters, ma'am.
So we have studied that it consists of tracheids, vessels, xylem parenchyma, and xylem fibers. Tracheids and vessels have thick walls, and they are dead cells when they get matured. They are tubular in structure, which help them transport water and minerals vertically. Parenchyma stores food, and xylem fibers helps in giving support to the plant. Now next complex permanent tissue is phloem, which is made up of 5 types of cells. Sieve cells, sieve tubes, companion cells, and then phloem parenchyma and phloem fiber also. Sieve tubes, as we use sieve in our daily lives also. For example, that chalni. So from that name, you can remember also that the sieve tubes are tubular cells and they have perforated walls. Phloem helps in transport of food from leaves to other parts of the body. So in xylem, we were focusing on that there was transport of water and minerals vertically. Like in days, we can transport water and minerals in vertical direction. But in case of phloem, it's going from leaves. Phloem transport food, right? So it goes from leaf to different parts of the plants. In phloem, all cells are living cells except phloem fiber. Phloem fiber is a dead cell.
Ma'am,
Yes,
ma'am, I have a doubt. Can I ask?
yes.
Ma'am, is there any reason for why do the companion cells they do not lose their nucleus when at maturity?
Can anyone in the class can answer this?
Ma'am, what was the question?
That a companion cell doesn't lose nucleus during maturity, on maturity.
Ma'am, is it because it helps the sieve tubes?
They are connected to the sieve tubes.
Sieve tubes.
Yes.
Okay.
And the sieve tubes lose their nucleus at maturity.
Okay, ma'am.
You can, are you able to connect this?
Ma'am,
Ma'am,
can you once
if
again tell?
they lose their nucleus, then how can the companion cells not lose their nucleus? And you're saying that they both are attached to each other. No? So they, as sieve tubes are also losing, then the companion cells should also lose their nucleus at maturity, right?
Yes. Companion cells do not lose their nucleus, but sieve tubes do. So
Okay.
sieve tubes are attached to companion cell, and still they survive as companion cell has nucleus.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Sieve tubes are actually dependent on the other cells for their metabolism.
Okay, ma'am.
Rest, I don't know in how much detail I can tell here, but For now, it's like the companion cell give companionship to the seed cell. The name themselves, they can tell
Yes, ma'am.
that why
Okay.
it is a companion cell.
Okay, ma'am.
So, so is it clear about xylem
Yes, ma'am.
and phloem?
Yes, ma'am.
Be clear about their functions. That xylem is for water and mineral transportation.
Phloem is for food and mineral
Food.
transportation.
Yes. So be clear about this. Don't get confused in exam. Now we'll study about animal tissues. So, first of all, can you give me some example of tissues in our body, human body, animals or
Muscular
human?
tissue.
Yes, muscular.
Ma'am,
Ma'am,
nervous
The
system.
cardiac tissues.
blood is a tissue, right?
Yes, ma'am. Transport.
Ma'am, bone.
Yes, bone.
Ma'am,
Ma'am,
ligaments.
cardiac tissues.
Yes, cardiac tissue. Yes,
Ma'am,
so we
ligament.
all know that these are present in our body and they are performing specialized functions. They have a special function to perform. For example, muscle cells. What are muscles for? The muscles
Ma'am,
contract and
yes.
relax so that we can move. It gives flexibility to our body. We can move only because we have muscles which are able to contract and
Relax.
relax. Now we also have blood in our body, which transports the
The
required thing from one part
yes,
to
ma'am.
another. For example, oxygen.
Ma'am, oxygen and carbon dioxide, the respiratory gases.
Yes. So it kinds of collects waste from one part of body and that carries them to liver and kidney where they can filter it.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? This is how our body functions. So all this is aided by this specialized parts of our body. For example, blood. And blood has a specific function. So blood is a tissue with a
Tissue.
specific function. For example, now we'll discuss about different types of tissues. Epithelial tissue, it is the covering or the protective tissue. What is the covering on our body? Which protects our body
Skin.
parts or the internal organs?
Skin.
Skin. Yes. The skin, which is present throughout our body, or the blood vessels. We have veins, you can see on our hand, right? That is also carrying blood. It also has some lining. So that is also made up of epithelial tissue. The lining of our mouth. Of course, it is different from skin, but there is lining. So these linings or these coverings are different because we also have classification in these animal tissues, but still they are protective covering, and these are known as epithelial tissue. Since we have to protect our body, they are tightly packed and they are continuous. We can see our skin is continuous, like a continuous sheet throughout our body, and these tissues are tightly packed, like a cementing. They have very small amount of cementing material, and they have no intercellular space. So if we see the characteristics of epithelial tissue, they are tightly packed, they are continuous throughout our body like a continuous sheet. They have small cementing material. Like, for example, we have seen an example of cementing material like lignin in plants that made the intercellular space very small there, right? That kind of cementing material is also present in animal cells, but that cementing material is very small. Also, the intercellular space are very small or they have no intercellular space. Okay. Now, the if we see this epithelia, this tissue, it has different structures and different functions. For example, the lining of a lung alveoli. You have heard about that. There is lung and there are alveoli, where there is exchange of gases takes place, O2, CO2, right? And that takes place through these alveoli. So there is this covering. This covering has to be a bit permeable, selectively permeable, we can say, so that it can allow exchange of gases.
Yes, ma'am.
So these epithelial cells have different functions, so they'll have different structure according to that. Okay, so all epithelial cells are not same. That, for example, the epithelial tissue we have it on our mouth lining, or the epithelial tissue that is skin. So they are all different. They can be divided into simple squamous epithelium, stratified, columnar, ciliated,
Cuboidal,
cuboidal, and glandular.
glandular.
Yes. So, if we say simple squamous epithelium, they are extremely thin and delicate. For example, the lining of our mouth. There's simple one layer. If there's single layer, a flat layer, of course it will be thin. So this is very delicate. The simple squamous. But when we put layers of this simple squamous and form stratified squamous. Stratified means that there are many layers. When the skin's epithelial cells are arranged in many layers, these simple squamous cells are arranged in many layers. This leads to formation of our skin. Our skin cannot be as thin as the lining of our mouth. Then the internal organs will not that protected. That's why we arranged them in the simple squamous epithelium tissues in layers, and it led to formation of stratified squamous epithelium, which is present in our skin. So if I ask which kind of tissue is present in the lining of mouth?
Ma'am, stratified squamous because of many layers.
Mouth. I'm asking, I'm in
Ma'am,
mouth.
Squamous, simple
Simple
squamous.
Simple squamous. And skin is made up of which kind of tissue?
Stratified, ma'am, because
Stratified squamous epithelium.
yes, ma'am.
Now, for example, our intestines. They have this tissue and this form of structures inside our intestines. These facilitate the movement across these intestines, so that, for example, during digestion process, we have our food moving through these, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So they are shaped like this, so that this shape can aid the movement of the food.
Yes, ma'am.
So these are in form of these column, hence called columnar epithelium. Similarly, we have cilia.
Yes, ma'am.
That example in the nose. We have like hair-like structure, which prevents dust and particles or anything, the mucus also. So the hair helps them move out of the body or what has to be taken inside of the body.
Yes, ma'am.
Similarly, this ciliated,
Columnar
it is type
epithelium.
of columnar epithelium only because the shape is like this only.
Ma'am, it also facilitates the movement through the epithelial barrier, right?
Epithelial barrier.
Ma'am, the ciliated columnar epithelium also facilitate movement throughout the epithelial barrier, right?
Yes, it helps in the pushing forward.
Yes, ma'am. Of the
Any barrier?
mucus and any
Yes,
dirt particles, right?
yes. So then next is cuboidal. That is, it is in the name suggests that it is in the shape of a cube, and it is present in the lining of kidneys or salivary glands. Now, when there is a special function to these tissues, an additional specialization is provided. For example, they have to secrete some substances. So the some portion of these epithelial tissue fold and they form gland, and this is called glandular epithelium. So any one of you can give an overview. Any one of you.
Mhm.
Okay. Yes, Rohit.
So, ma'am, first, epithelial tissues are the simple or outer or protective covering of animal body. It
Yes.
covers
Just
most
move
of
on to
the.
the types.
Yes, ma'am.
Simply
Ma'am,
from types.
so
Yes.
it is of five types. Squamous, as the name suggests, it's made up of simple, flat kind of uh, cells that appear as tiles over the that appear as tiles. Ma'am, they are present on the skin lining of the mouth, the lining of the blood vessels, and the lining of the tubule,
Yes.
lining of the blood vessels and the esophagus.
Yes.
Ma'am, then
Then.
we have stratified squamous, and simple squamous is single layered and closely fitted. Stratified
Yes.
squamous is made up of many layers to prevent wear and tear in the animal cells. Ma'am, it is present on the outer covering of the skin to
Yes.
as it is resistant to any mechanical injury. Ma'am, then
Okay.
we have
Next.
cuboidal epithelium, as the name suggests,
Okay.
shaped in cube. The cell it is made up of cube-shaped cells. The lining of the kidney tubules and ducts of the salivary glands are made up of the
Okay.
cuboidal epithelium. Ma'am, and they provide
Yes.
mechanical support, where mechanical support is provided by the cuboidal epithelium.
Okay. Yes.
Ma'am, then we have columnar epithelium. Columnar, columnar means pillar-like structures. The epithelium is made up of tall pillar-like structures. Ma'am, it is present in the regions where the process of absorption and secretion occur.
Yes.
It also
And
yes, ma'am. It also lines the sperm ducts and oviducts,
hmm.
ma'am, and it also facilitates movement throughout the epithelial barrier, across the epithelial barrier.
Okay.
Ma'am, then one more type is columnated ciliar epithelium, which is cilia, which is made up of cilia, hair-like structures. So, ma'am, these
Yes.
cilia have the ability to move and they push out any dirt, substances or foreign particles like mucus and all the dirt. Uh, yes, ma'am. And all the dirt.
Okay.
Ma'am, and the
Okay.
last
Very good. Very good, Rohit.
ma'am,
Very
glandular
good.
also should I tell?
No, it's okay. I know that you know everything. The main
Mhm.
purpose of this was that only. You know, you have revised it well.
Yes, ma'am.
So I hope you do well in exam also, right?
And my finals are from 1st Feb.
Oh, uh, still you'll have to revise these chapters again and again because
Yes,
there are many
ma'am.
new names for you. Yes,
Ma'am, I finished revising it once more. I'm
yeah,
currently
good.
revising the next chapter, the last one in bio.
Okay, okay, okay. So you'll have next class, any class
Yes, ma'am.
today?
No, ma'am, I don't have
Okay,
any other class today.
okay, okay. So okay, let us meet next time with any other chapter if I get any class with you.
Yes,
By
ma'am.
the way, I'm a specialist for like my core subject is chemistry.
Yes, ma'am.
So but I was given this chapter to taught to you. I hope I did well with this because bio is not my strong point. But I made sure that you revise all the points, all the key points. Okay.
Okay.
So keep revising all of them again. Okay. So now we can end the class, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Bye, ma'am.
ma'am.